Welcome to our second GAT Labs for Education live roundtable event, covering how AI can help improve the delivery of education. Hosted by Scott Fisher. Recorded live on April 2nd with our expert guests, Marta McAlister, Mateusz Olenik, and Brett Salakas.
Welcome. Thank you all for joining us for the second of GAT Labs roundtable events on AI in education. Today's event will focus on how AI can help improve the delivery of education. While everyone settles in, please take a moment to join our chat. Let us know what city and country you're joining from and which AI tool you use most in your daily work life. The chat messages from throughout the session will be captured, and if a response is required, a GAT Labs team member will follow up after the event. I'm Scott Fisher, the head of U.S. Market Development for GAT Labs. I'm in New York right now. Joining me today is a panel of guest speakers. Before we begin, let's take a moment for the guests to tell us a bit about themselves. Brett, let's start with you.
I'm going to say good morning to everybody, because where I am coming from, it is the very early morning of probably the day after, the day before all of you. So coming at you from the future, giving you, I'm going to be able to destroy Martha and Mateusz in this conversation, because I've got 1 day extra advantage of AI information. I'm obviously, probably can tell from the accent, talking to you at 4:30 in the morning from Sydney, Australia. Good morning, everybody from the future.
Thank you so much for having us today. I appreciate that. Marta?
Hi, everybody. I'm Marta McAlister. I work at Google for Education, and I'm based here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. My team basically brings products to market, and in the last couple of years, I've started supporting our enterprise business as well on the Chrome OS and Chrome browser side, in addition to Google for Education. And before working at Google, I was a classroom teacher. I taught 6th and 7th grade math and special education, and I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much. And our third panelist today, I'm going to try to get this right. It's Mateusz.
Very good. Very good.
All right. I've been practicing.
Hi, all. Thanks for having me. I'm Mateusz Olenik. I work at the GAT Labs, and I'm a software engineer. I also lead a team for the AI projects. And we do a lot of interesting stuff using machine learning and AI at GAT Labs. And I'm also a parent myself, so I really enjoy discovering how AI can be used in education, because it's also important for me as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you could join us today. Before I jump in with the first question, I am just reviewing the chat very quickly, and it's wonderful to have people from all over the world joining us today. Our first question today is...
Wait, Scotty, I'm just going to say, just before you ask that first question,
sure.
I'm going to say a big thank you to Ashley. He gave me a little bit of love for waking up this early in the morning. And then after listening to Marta's comment, so thank you very much, Ashley. After listening to Marta's comment, I should probably say that actually I work for HP, because I forgot to say who I work for. And I'm the education ambassador for Australia and New Zealand. And like Marta, I'm also an educator. I'm a primary school educator. So kindergarten to year 6 is where I spent most of my career, and a former principal too. So I'm coming at this from a bit of a cloudy brain for hopefully only the first few minutes of this conversation, but from an educator's perspective, like Marta as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that additional information. We appreciate it very much. So let's move on now to the first question, which is what role does AI play in improving the delivery of educational content and streamlining administrative tasks for educators? So I encourage everybody to jump in, but Brett, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, well, thanks for starting with me. That's really good, because I'm the most prepared. Look, do you know what? You mentioned just before we came online that I may have posted something on LinkedIn yesterday just to prepare for this. And I had a really interesting comment from someone from Africa who actually had come on and sort of said, like, right, HP, Google, you guys need to stop just pushing things out and saying that you've got AI solutions that are perfect for everybody and it's a one-size-fit-all type of thing. And And like, okay, right, you know what? Entitled to your criticism, entitled to your passion. And I had to listen to that. And firstly, love anyone passionate about education. That's a good start. And secondly, I think whilst slightly misdirected, he had a point. One of the most important things we know in education, and there's a lot of research and decades of research to back this up, that the more personalised, the more individualised, the more bespoke content is for students, the more likely they are to be engaged and the more likely they are to have academic success. The best thing that tools like Google Gemini and like other AI tools are able to do is to allow us, you see, Marta, I throw in Gemini right off the bat.
Appreciate that. I didn't even pay you for that. Thank you.
So you know what? I might be sleepy, but I'm also sharp. But, the best thing that we can do is actually create bespoke content. We can differentiate our work. We're able to take things that may have been at one time standard and really put it at age appropriate and meet the student where they're at in their learning.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that comment. Marta, how about you? Do you have something you'd like to say about this?
I'm anchoring on to the words you said there, which is delivery and then administrative tasks. I guess that's 3 words, but the administrative tasks was really what stood out to me in your question. I think just taking a step back from the educator role, and then I'll get to that in a sec. You know, one of the things that I've seen even in my own use of AI has been that it's been able to elevate what I'm able to do. And I think there's a whole range of people's experiences, all the way from avoiding it completely and being terrified of using it to and through what Ethan Mollick refers to as co-intelligence, where it's a part of how you think and execute now. But in terms of what I've actually seen for the role of AI playing in the tools that we pilot and use, I'll just speak on the observation of people in our pilot programs. So we actually surveyed a lot of participants, teachers and administrators that have been using things like Gemini in pilot programs, and they've cited saving about 13 hours per week, namely from reducing time spent on what we would classify as administrative tasks. And what's interesting to me about that is that it's actually the flip of what we used to see in terms of educator time distribution. So if you think about the majority of your average teacher's time when I was a teacher, that was typically spent on generating the content for your class and then reviewing and assessing and providing feedback on students' turned in work. But now for the AI embracers, you're actually seeing a lot of time spent on reviewing and revising the suggested first pass that the AI is taking on that content generation and feedback generation, and flipping more of their time on in-class assessment and interaction and facilitation. So I definitely think AI is going to play a role not only in that like time-saving piece, but I think it's also shifting what then teachers focus on with that remaining time that they've saved.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how that has flipped. Thank you very much. Mateusz, have you something to add to this?
Well, yes, I don't have actually the educator perspective, but I have a parent perspective, and I actually ran this question through my boys to check with them how would AI help them or streamline the work they do at school. And what they said is that definitely they need more engaging content in the schools to motivate them to do their homework, to participate in the tasks. And I believe that AI is, as Brett mentioned, a perfect tool to better tailor or even bespoke the content for every kid. I believe this is what I can say on this topic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your comments. Okay, so why don't we move on to our second question now? We're going to look at how is AI used to enhance the scalability and flexibility of educational delivery across diverse learning environments, for example, in-person, hybrid, online. Why don't we go to you, Marta? You want to start with that one?
Sure. So, I mean, I think we should first address one of the obvious challenges of the scalability of AI, which right now is cost. I think that's a short-term problem, but obviously expensive technology is not ubiquitous. and that could perpetuate equity divide and issues. And so I think that's just first and foremost something that we have to address. But I will say that I'm optimistic there because the cost curve has been pretty dramatic. We've already seen 10x reduction in cost to deliver AI services in the last couple of years, which to me is really encouraging for the scalability piece that you mentioned, and also just the equitable access of these solutions. Because, it's one thing to say you can do in-person, hybrid, online, but for a subset of people who can pay for or access that technology is a whole other question. So I just want to first address the cost part of that. That's not, an obvious part of your question, but I think is an important one. The second part in terms of delivery, so regardless of the medium of how you deliver it, I think it's important to also think about the foundational pedagogical approaches. Like, what's your philosophical approach or pedagogical approach of what you're trying to achieve and how AI is actually impacting that. So I am actually personally really passionate about this. About 2 years ago, when generative AI solutions were popping out everywhere, I locked myself in a phone room and I interviewed tons of learning scientists, researchers, pedagogical experts. I asked them a ton of questions, but a lot of what I asked them was, how do you think this will change how we teach and change how we learn? And what was interesting to me, there were a lot of things I learned, but one of the key things I learned that relates to this question was that they actually, a lot of them agree on a theme of, we might actually see tried and true pedagogical approaches become more practice because of the fears around cheating, because of the fears around this technology. So for example, you might actually see more people actually implement things like flipped classroom because they want to do in-class assessment of understanding, and also because there's a lot of easier tools to use to create that content that people can consume at home. It used to be like prohibitive to provide, homework where you could have a video or something like that. It would be time intensive, labor intensive. And now with AI tools that help with the content creation and with this like underlying incentive and fear of what might happen if you don't assess in class, you might actually see people taking a pedagogical delivery approach that actually aligns with what we know to be fundamentally better from a learning science perspective. So that was interesting. And then finally, to probably answer your question more directly, so that there's like the cost underlying, now what's your pedagogical philosophy? The final is like that medium or modality. How do you actually deliver it? And for me, I think what AI brings is just, now there are just so many more ways to deliver, consume, interact with, create content. So I do think that AI will continue to offer multiple entry points and ultimately just a lot of flexibility and options to achieve what may have historically required specific tools in the past. Now there's going to be multiple ways to, scratch that same itch, so to speak. So I think it offers a lot more breadth and flexibility.
All right, great, thank you. Mateusz, do you want to either respond to Marta or just the question itself directly?
Yeah, I guess I really agree with what Marta said. And on other than that, I also wanted to mention from my experience the pandemic times, and I wish there were so many well-developed AI tools back then, when the kids were locked in their houses and what they had was only online lessons. And the problem I saw that at that time was that the teachers struggled to provide the content to the kids, so even those reluctant students can engage in the lessons. And the problem was also the verifying the knowledge over the online lessons. So I believe in kind of situation when we have to run the online lesson, any AI tools can help teachers with especially with preventing cheating when doing some assignments, maybe, and mainly with engaging them better in the online lessons. So that's one point I wanted to mention here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Brett, let's finish up this question with you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. Firstly, I just want to say, Marta, could not love your response even more. perfect balance of some experience with like a big multinational tech firm, but still so heart and soul and core of what your answer was. Only a true teacher could get a question about scalability of AI and answer it with a pedagogical statement. So I absolutely adore that. Yeah, no, because do you know what? You went down exactly the same road that I wanted to illustrate, and I've been sometimes with some of the hype, especially some of the I get a little bit concerned that some of the bespoke AI solutions, particularly some of the ones that are at scale, and let's say are about like the possibility of having a tutoring AI, where you might be able to train at scale, train some an AI tool on a state's curriculum or a district's curriculum or a national curriculum. And the pitch almost is a business pitch to be able to talk to, I guess, leaders of a jurisdiction, or particularly political leaders of a government, and say, you know what, you have a teacher shortage in physics in this remote and regional area. I'd like to say to you, I can solve your. I would like to solve your teacher shortage by saying, here's this app, here is this tool, here is this AI platform that can actually go at your curriculum, meet the child at their needs, and has a physical demonstration of being able to do the act of teaching content. Now, the trouble with that is perhaps these remote kids, perhaps these kids that aren't normally in a mainstream school, perhaps these kids that are a little bit troubled and you have difficulties finding a teacher for them, perhaps they are the ones that are the most in need of a real human, the ones who really actually need that personal relationship, actually really need that human interaction. So I think being able to pedagogically have a tool that can do the tutoring, that can be on demand, that can do that, needs to be balanced with that humanity. So very, very recently, I was working with a remote school here in Australia that was delivering the HSC, so that's our Year 12 sort of content, and they were required, because of some sort of, let's say, environmental factors, the school had to be split, 2 different campuses, teachers couldn't get across, and they had to go to a little bit of a hybrid style teaching, not too dissimilar from what we did during lockdown and COVID. And they needed to deliver the very, very bespoke subjects. Well, they didn't actually have that. What we ended up doing was creating a pedagogical framework that was a little bit like a triangle. So you had the expert teacher that was delivering explicit instruction. Marta was talking about the science of learning. We know that very, very explicit content experts, that's a crucial, vital sort of teaching framework. They were then able to have a 24/7 switched on AI tool that the students could reiterate, retrain, study with, and reinforce the learning that they got from that explicit teacher. And then the person that was in the room was that old-fashioned pedagogue, the traditional embodiment of what a teacher was. Just like the ancient Greek days, they were able to then nurture the holistic sort of support of the student, make sure they're focused, make sure their behavior is switched on, make sure that they're actually challenging and motivating their student. Those 3 balances, that is the way that we get learning increased at scale using AI. My 2 cents.
Yeah, and I see a lot of questions in the chat, Scott. Is it okay if we respond to some of those in line?
Please do.
Yeah, I mean, like on the humanness, the OECD even report. I mean, personally, I believe that the value of humans is always going to matter. But like my personal opinion aside, there's a lot of like recent reports and data, even from the workforce side, around soft skills being increasingly more important in a world of AI. And what other field requires the most soft skills but teaching? I also think teachers, a lot of people have said this, but teachers are probably the best AI prompters, because who else can simply explain something and get sometimes a not cooperative person to do things they're trying to instruct them to do. And so I just want to hit on that humanness that I think a couple of you are getting at. The other part that we're getting at, which maybe you'll get into another question, Scott, was like around what's the learning intent behind a lot of these product designs. And something I feel particularly passionate about is, yeah, a lot of us are paranoid about brain rot or things that might happen as a result of using this technology. But what are the very intentional product decisions and feature choices you can make that actually reinforce the very things we're afraid to lose? For example, a feature that requires peer-to-peer collaboration when you're paranoid we're going to turn into a single-player game mode in isolation, or a feature that forces you to have that productive struggle before getting an answer. And so that's something I think about a lot from a product development standpoint. That said, I think those fears are very valid, and people will always have alternatives. But I just wanted to address some of the stuff I saw kind of coming in real time.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Brett, to your point about the importance of the balance between human interaction and technology, that is extremely important, and it's something that shouldn't be overlooked and shouldn't be lost as we move forward in the name of progress here. So, thank you all. If no one else has anything else to say on that one, I'm going to move forward. And at this point, before we move on to the next question, we're going to get some feedback from the attendees. So we're going to put up a poll in a moment. So on the bottom right of your session toolbar, you'll see polls. So when that pops up, go ahead and click on that and take a moment to submit your response. That would be great. So the question we're asking in the poll is, what is AI's most essential way to improve education delivery? Is it streamlining administrative tasks such as grading and assignment management, providing real-time monitoring of student progress in digital environments, ensuring the authenticity of student work through AI-powered verification tools, enhancing scalability and flexibility in hybrid and online learning environments, or finally, supporting the creation of personalized learning content and resources? So if you'd go ahead and take a moment to respond to that, we'll see what the poll results are showing.
It'll be interesting with your polls here because you've got a fairly informed audience. I'm just having a look at some of the feedback that's coming. Obviously, everything that Ashley says is perfectly gold. I love you, Ashley. But let's Jim Masters, I think. Yeah, Jim. G'day, Jimmy. Jim Masters is dropping some real seriously deep thoughts. And that's not just because he's just quoted John Hattie. So shout out to another Australian researcher. Thank you, John Hattie. But Jim, I think you've got some really, really good points. Actually, Jim, earlier, I'm just scrolling back up. Marta, when you were talking, Jim had a really good point. I'm just trying to scroll up. Relating to what you were saying, Google Notebook. How good is Google Notebook LM? What a good product that is. Using that in your district. Just as you go through, scroll through, have a look at some of the things that Jim Masters is saying. Very, very informative.
Yeah, the chat responses have been terrific, and it'd be great if we had the ability to go through them all one at a time. But we will follow up and send out the context of the chats to everybody after this. So taking a look at the responses, it looks like the overwhelming winner by far is that supporting the creation of personalized learning content and resources is the what most people are considering to be the most essential way to improve education delivery. And I don't know if anybody would disagree with that. Anybody have a differing opinion on the panel? Okay, so we'll just move forward then, and we'll go on to our next question today. So our third question today is, how do AI-powered platforms ensure the security and authenticity of student work in the educational delivery process? So Mateusz, you want to take a stab at this one first, please?
Yes, I will. Well, I think it's very important in the work with AI tools to provide the support for the teacher to distinguish the AI-generated answers from the answers that were written and prepared by the student themselves. And this is the topic that we looked closely at here at GAT Labs in order to deliver to the teacher a tool that will help him assess the answer that student is providing for the assignment or a task. We believe that there is already a huge problem with students abusing AI in terms that they use it to auto-generate the content for as an answer to the problem specified by the teacher. And I think that I personally believe that the way to overcome this problem is to provide a secure environment where the teacher can submit or provide a task or assignment description to the group of students, and then the students in this secure environment can provide their answers. In order to verify whether the answer was auto-generated by the AI tool or written by the student, it's not only necessary to do the static text analysis, because it's very easy to cheat even this kind of checking. But it's also it's even more important to observe the student activity while he is or she is writing the answers or providing the solution to a problem. And this is crucial because in our solution, in our project, we put student in the center, and we try to observe and do a behavioral analysis of how the student is responding, how she or he is providing their answer to the problem, and we don't make a ultimate decision whether the content provided by the student is the auto-generated answer or the answer written by a human. We just provide a report for a teacher, and the teacher is the ultimate decision maker in this process. So we want to equip the teacher with a bunch of tools or a tool that will help him assess the answers provided during the homework assignment process. And I believe this is very important in nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important to recognize that what is being provided is an additional tool to the teacher, that in no way is anything being done to replace the need for the teacher or to do the work of the teacher, but just to give them one more thing in their toolbox that they can use to assess the work that the students are creating. Marta, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I know you kind of asked two parts of it, right? One was around security and the other around authenticity.
Authenticity. Right.
Yeah, I think first on the security bit, I think it's really important that nobody always reads all the terms of service, but I think it's important to read the terms for what you're using, especially if there's a difference between what you use with your consumer account versus what you use with your education account. And I, just speaking on behalf of my own products that I'm representing, because I'm not familiar with the many, many, many products out there, but just to clarify what I've often heard is a misunderstanding. I feel really privileged to be able to say whether you're using the free or the paid version of many of the AI solutions that we talk about at Google, when you use your EDU account, Gemini is data protected, and what that's a fancy way of saying no humans are reviewing your data is not shared with other organizations or users, your data is not being used to train those models. So some people like to ask me like, oh, if I'm using the free, does that mean it's not data protected? I have to pay for? No, it's data protected whether you're using free or paid, the school owns that data. And the other thing I'll clarify is we are one of the only safe and secure teen experiences that have also been reviewed and assessed by Common Sense Media. So I think it's important to look at that due diligence first from a security standpoint, especially when you're talking about education and student data. So that's just like the first part to addressing your question. And then on the authenticity one, I mean, this is a real thorny area for sure. I remember when the chatbots were first coming out, the first thing we got asked was, can you guys do plagiarism detection for Gen AI? And just to be straight up with you, that's a tech arms race that nobody can win. And we recognize the ethical implications of false positives. Kids get kicked out for academic integrity issues, and that's a high bar. And we were not popular at the time for making that call, but we made the call to not invest in that product feature because we knew we could not execute it well. And the folks that did execute it in the short term very quickly had to walk back false positive rates and change their strategies. And so I think that to think that this is only going to have a technological solution is short-sighted, to be honest. And I do think it's going to require, to Mateusz's points, like a lot of changing of how we teach and how we assess. So I think there's partly like a format and forum, Blue Books are probably very popular in higher ed again. But I also think there's like a philosophical point to this too, which is like, what's the durable skill you are trying to assess? And what's the right modality or means of assessing that? And I'll just offer an analogy that I heard Shantanu, who's my boss, he actually used in a recent talk, this concept of, teaching your kid to ride a bike, and how he made the rookie mistake, and I almost made this mistake with my own kids, of teaching with training wheels instead, and because it actually takes like 30 seconds for a kid to learn how to pedal, but the real skill you're trying to teach and the like foundation of riding a bike is balance. And I think there's this like disconnect between this like illusion of learning or assessing what we think we want to assess and what the student has learning, and like there's going to need to be a pretty philosophical revisit of what we are trying to assess and what's the best way to assess that. And I actually think in some ways it's a healthy exercise for us to do even without generative AI in the question. So a little bit more of a deeper pedagogical take on your authenticity question for this time of day, but hopefully that gave some people things to think about.
No, I appreciate that. And you made a couple of really good points there. And just as a company, just like you mentioned, how important data privacy is to Google, we take that very seriously too. That's core with everything we do. And to your other point about, the game of catch up with the authenticity, you're absolutely right. And that's why the tools we provide are just that. They're tools, as we were talking about previously, to assist the teacher. We're in no way saying these tools will replace the need for the teacher to, sit in or take a closer look at what's going on. But thank you for those comments. Brett, how about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, you've actually hit on something that I'm super passionate about with this question. I think there are a lot of AI grifters who are peddling some false narrative in this space. This particular question gets me really, really fired up. So I think AI grifter is a term that we need to be able to be aware of and use a little bit more. I think there are a lot of people playing in the education space that are positioning themselves as AI in education experts. I think the simple reality is AI in education is relatively new. I mean, AI is an older concept, older than we probably realise, but let's say the explosion post-ChatGPT, explosion of consumer AI, relatively new for teachers to have it on tap. I don't think we have had it in our systems, in our classrooms long enough for really many people to be able to position themselves and say they are experts in this, and they can make informed decisions. They can guide entire schools, they can guide in entire systems into making long-term decisions about AI. And one of the softest areas or the easiest targets is assessment and assessment integrity. So I think the false narrative here is that that's it, AI leads to cheating and assessment integrity is out the window. Realistically, I think this is a very short-term issue, and it actually is probably, I'm gonna use a Marta line, it comes down to pedagogical practice. If we are doing very, very low-tiered assessment tasks that AI can easily replicate and answer. We know in Bloom's taxonomy that the very bottom of Bloom's taxonomy is, or the lowest tier of Bloom's taxonomy is our reciting basic facts and information. AI is particularly good at being able to spit back information, facts, and basic content for us. If we are having assessments that are targeted at that lowest tier, and a lot of the time in classrooms we do that because they are simple things to mark, they are processes that we can do, and they are historically what we have done with essays and short answer questions and all this sort of stuff. These are things that AI is very, very able to do. We have known for decades, the research has told us for decades what really good quality assessment is. We want that collaborative stuff. We want that summative stuff. We want creative responses to stuff where students are inferring and then linking different things and being able to articulate in real time what they're able to do and what they're able to understand and demonstrate their understanding. Mateusz has just sort of alliterated that at GAT Labs, you've got systems to be able to do things in real time, to monitor that stuff in real time. These are the ways that we should be going, the roads that we should be going down. If AI has done nothing else but give us a big kick in the backside across the education system to stop doing low-tiered, low-angled sort of can you recite basic facts assessment, and it's actually made us rethink of how we do assessment, either leaning into AI so that students can create a wonderful thing, or doing AI resistant assessment that captures just a student's thought. I think actually that's the education system is better because of that, because now we can actually go into what we know is effective assessment practices.
Well, thank you for that feedback. Does anybody else have anything else you'd like to add? Otherwise, I'm going to.
I just want to mention that I couldn't agree with you more, Brett, on that. I really believe this is the key to run into future with AI tools. I mean, seeing how the lessons are provided here in Poland in school, I believe this should be a wake-up call for the teachers to start providing assignments in a different way, as you mentioned.
Well, thank you, Mateusz. Appreciate that. So let's move on now to the next question here. And for this one, we're going to look at how can AI improve accessibility for educators and students with diverse needs? So Marta, let's go back to you to start with this one.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of people are holding out on the promise of AI doing wonders for personalized learning, myself included. And I think one of the key points of that is meeting students where they're at and customizing their experience in a one-to-one way, which is otherwise quite difficult to pull off, but with a customized chatbot type experience, or whether it's, using AI to have reteaching moments, to do live translation and live captions in real time when a student is experiencing a lesson in a non-native language, whether it's using AI to work completely offline because the student can't access it with no Wi-Fi. I think there are lots of applications where AI is actually being used to solve a true problem. And to me, there's like a very wide spectrum of accessibility needs that can help here. What's most promising to me, to be honest, is actually this idea that we're democratizing the ability for people to actually build bespoke solutions for themselves as well. Like there is only so much that a technology company will invest in for a total addressable market or a viable business model. And oftentimes that will result in, what I not so flatteringly might call is lowest common denominator applicability. But in reality, obviously, there are a lot of needs that benefit everyone. A universal design approach is core to that. And I think that now that you're seeing the ability to just tell a chatbot to code something for you and build something for you, you're starting to see amazing applications of tools that people are building for themselves to address their own personal needs, and then tons of other people are getting benefit out of. So I think there's one part of this, which is like AI tools that your typical company puts out there, but I also think the fact that AI has made coding and access to building tools yourself so easy, that to me gives me a lot of promise in the accessibility space as well. And then the last thing I'll just say to this is I was listening to a recent talk where Drew Bent, who came from Khan Academy and Schoolhouse, but now is at Anthropic, he was talking about how, AI's really focused on the IQ, but we really need to focus on the EQ. And that to me is also really important, where when you're trying to accommodate such a wide range of human experience, you can't just overly index on the intelligence and information part of AI, but really on the holistic human piece of it. So I'm also optimistic for a lot of the pivots and investment there from a lot of the tech players out there.
Interesting. Thank you. Mateusz, we'll go to you next, and then we'll follow up with Brett, and we'll let him finish up this question.
I just want to add that when I read about the students with diverse needs, I think about students with Asperger's syndrome. My oldest son was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I realized what are the struggles that comes with the teaching students with such a diagnosis in a class where we have all kind of students. And I believe that AI can help in different ways here, not only by providing an online tool to do something for the students, but providing actual device like noise cancelling headphones that can separate the students from the distractions in a class, which is very important for them to do their work during the lessons. So I believe that we shouldn't only focus on how AI can be used in a way that we generate content, deliver content, generate more motivating content, but also how AI can be used in different aspects of student life in school. So I would bring this kind of experience to the table.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Brett, what's your take on this?
Look, I've got, pardon me, I'm going to say three things. One, Marta, you might like my first response here, because my first response here is not just as to the why of AI, but the why of EdTech in schools in general. Actually happened to me quite some time ago, and it was at the very, very early days of the Google tools, the Google Cloud for education, Google Tools for Education. And it was when Google had just rolled out the voice-to-text feature within Google Docs. It was probably either my last or second last year of being in the classroom before I entered into like a more of a full-time administration role. I had a child who was being reintegrated into mainstream education and had come out of for lack of a better word, a special school. High needs, high functioning autism, but very, very difficult for him to engage with other students within the classroom. If I gave him a pen or a pencil, he really struggled to get more than a sentence written in any writing period for any bit of work. And what I ended up doing with him was allowing him to use voice typing within the Google Doc, and then he would sort of print that out and paste that into his workbook and in his exercise book. And then it was like a rainbow vomit of thought, a gigantic paragraph that was about like an A4 page long, maybe sometimes even longer. But this was the first time that this child had ever been able to fully articulate a whole bunch of writing. And I remember, like, with his reading, he was on very, very basic readers. Like his comprehension level was technically very, very low. But he always carried these big, gigantic books, so these huge, big, thick textbooks around with him. And whenever we did reading, he'd sit and flick. I remember asking the special needs teacher, do you think he can understand? She was adamant, absolutely no, he can't understand those. Just, take them off him, give him the little readers. And I guess instinctively I was like, you know what? Any reading is good reading. If he wants to try and read a big, thick textbook, let him read a big, thick textbook. I got a message from him about 3 years ago on LinkedIn, just before he was about to defend his thesis. He is now a PhD in physics, and actually at the moment is an associate professor at a university about like 30 minutes away from me. This is a child in grade 6, was told he couldn't read and with a pen could only write a single sentence. He
Amazing.
Just DMing me on LinkedIn was able to say he still uses voice typing. He still uses voice typing to be able to do that. So you've got this. So one, Marta, thank you, Google, for being able to open up a whole world of accessibility for a child that just needed a different way to express. And I think that is my best argument for why we are in the educational technology business. And AI is just an element of that. How can we help students reach their full potential? And we find those ways and put in the appropriate tools to let them achieve what they're able to achieve more fully. That's point number one. Point number 2, I saw someone mention in the chat, Raymond, it may have been you, about inclusivity and sign language. I'm going to mention 2 products really quickly because we haven't done a little product thing. Intel's, I think it's called Omnibook. Intel OmniBridge. Intel's OmniBridge. It can, Marta, you mentioned real-time translations. Intel's OmniBridge can actually translate sign language real time, so you can have a spoken conversation with someone who speaks sign language, and you can understand them, they can understand you, and then you've got to go for inclusivity. Imagine you're in a school, you've got a diverse cultural mix within the parent body. How do you, as a principal, be able to have an inclusive community feel when you're pushing out your newsletter in English? One of the coolest things that I have seen very, very recently is one of my schools that I work with in, I'm going to say, for those people who are of a vintage, you might remember Crocodile Dundee. I'm going to say up in Darwin, so right up in the real Ochre Australiana crocodiles and all that sort of stuff, right in the Northern Territory. I was talking to one of my principals there, and they've just started using a few different tools, but they've just switched over to Adobe Firefly to be able to put in a little bit of voice translation in their newsletter. So they've got a little Vietnamese community with the parents not speaking a lot of English. So on her newsletter, she actually has a little translation in Vietnamese, video of her speaking, but actually speaking in Vietnamese to be more inclusive, so that the parents actually know what's happening within the school. These sorts of really simple tools are all ways that AI is making our schools a more inclusive place. So it's not just can kids cheat with ChatGPT. The AI conversation about AI in education is so much more broader, so much more diverse, and so much more nuanced, and only growing every day.
Well, thank you. I've often spoken about the fact that, to me, the importance in the technology, especially ed tech, is that the tool is a solution to a specific problem. It's not just bells and whistles and flash and look how exciting it can be. But the examples you just gave were wonderful examples of just that, where these tools are solving real world problems and enabling people that otherwise wouldn't be able to do certain tasks on their own. So I think it's a very promising time for all of us. Does anybody have anything more to add on that one before I move on? All right, great.
I actually do want to, I'm sorry, I just want to reflect on something very briefly, which is that what's amazing is, my license was in special education, and where we've seen the most innovation historically with use of technology has often started with those that have these bespoke needs, and then folks gravitate and realize how that's benefiting everyone. So I think, if you are looking for very transformational uses of technology, go to your assistive technology department at your school, talk to the teachers that are in special education classrooms, because that's where a lot of innovation's been happening for a long time, for sure.
Thank you. All right, so I'll try to move this along because I know we're running a little bit longer than we expected to, but this is wonderful conversation. So let's keep it going.
You must admit, even at 4 a.m., it has been a fun conversation to have.
Well, we're glad you're a part of it for sure. So, all right, we'll move forward here, and we'll move on to, we have two questions left I hope to get to today. The next one is, what are the key challenges in integrating AI into the existing educational infrastructure, and how can they be overcome? So, Brett, let's go back to you, see if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I think we've hinted at this. I think one of the biggest challenges is, how do we maintain that human in the loop, and how do we ensure that the politicians and some of the decision makers are aware that teaching is more than just can we take anything that's in a set syllabus or a set curriculum, take that data and input that data into a child's brain. Teaching is more than that. No 16-year-old is doing linear equations because the computer screen says do linear equations. That doesn't happen. That they sit there and they do the linear equations because Miss or sir has taken the time to explain it, has built that relationship, and then actually go through that. We need to be aware that humanity is a part of education that cannot be extracted or taken away. There is do you know what? One of the best and strongest voices, I obviously I don't know the religious backgrounds of everybody in the conversation, but the Vatican, Pope Francis has put out probably some of the best articles and the best thought pieces on AI in education that's out there. Most of the, I guess, the papers and the thoughts have come from the tech industry itself. The Vatican is coming from a point of people's humanity, people's soul, the livelihood of the next generation. And I think just a month ago they had a papal edict called Antiqua et Nova. So rusty on my Latin, I hope I said that right. But basically, how do we make sure that the student, the human, is actually the beneficiary of anything that we do, and any AI we do actually is rolled out in a way that we are developing the holistic nature of the child, not just trying to transfer data and have kids score really highly on a standardized test, because that is not the soul of the purpose of education.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mateusz, how about you? Do you have something you'd like to say on this question?
Yes, definitely there are challenges in integrating AI in education system. I think what is important is teaching the teachers how they can encourage students to use AI in a creative way, not only banning AI from the class and from being used in the class, but and this point was mentioned by one of my colleagues from my team, who is also a teacher at the university. So I feel that this is very important, that AI is becoming a tool and is available everywhere, or almost for free. So I think the crucial is to educate the teachers how they can encourage students to use the tool in a proper way, so they can boost their creativity, not only in a bad way.
Yeah.
Marta, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, just, I mean, on the training piece, so I agree with everything that's been said for sure. I guess just to add, I think one of the key challenges I've seen from visiting a lot of school districts around the world is that the pace at which this technology is moving, it's really hard to train on. And professional development is a key challenge into people having a lot of fear around turning tools on and using them. And I'll just share a quick anecdote that I think exemplifies a bit of an approach that I think might become more of the norm, or I hope is more the norm, which is like one of the favorite classes I observed about 2 years ago when ChatGPT first came out. With the teacher's assignment was go home and use any generative AI tool you can get access to safely and use it to make a point about generative AI. And then the next day the students came in and the range of projects was fascinating. Like one student was really interested in art, so they talked about copyright infringement and digital watermarking solutions. Another student was really into filmmaking and used it for creating storyboard line, but also showed like is it going to shortcut my creativity or does it enhance my creative process? One student was really into politics and made deep fake videos. Another student was really interested in computer science, and they showed how you can actually get the chatbot to break its own rules. And what I loved about this assignment was that the teacher had no idea how to use any of those tools. They didn't wait until they fully understood everything about the technology before they exposed and made a lesson that had a teachable moment about the technology. And I found that to be just such a very refreshing and honestly brave approach, because I think there's often this fear that and rationale that I have to have been trained, I have to fully understand all the ins and outs of this before I even turn it on for my classroom. And the reality is, like, I can't even keep up with all the tools that Google's putting out, never mind the rest of the world. And imagine a teacher that's balancing everything else and the reality of that. So that's a challenge. And I guess one proposal of how you might overcome it is embracing a bit of a different approach to learning alongside your students and learning from them, and figuring out this tech as we go to some moment, because there's a teachable moment either way. And then the other challenge, again, is like just a lot of fears, very rational fears. We covered cheating and academic integrity. People are worried we're turning into the blobs from WALL-E and that we're going to have brain rot and loss of critical thought. People are worried about loneliness. People are worried about exacerbating equity divides. So I don't have a lot of solutions to a lot of those fears, but other than to continue to lean into our humanness, because I think the more we lean into our humanness, the more we actually reinforce the things that we're afraid to lose. And so I don't have a pithy solution to overcome that challenge, but I think that's underlying a lot of these other challenges.
Well, I don't think anybody has a solution or the solution. That's why we're having these conversations. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we'll move on to the sixth and final question. And I think, did somebody else have a comment they wanted to make on the last question before I move on? I'm sorry, I thought I heard somebody speaking. I think we've sort of touched around the content of this next question in different ways so far, but maybe we can just bring it all together in this final question of, how can AI-based technologies be leveraged to improve student-teacher communication and feedback loops in digital learning environments? So, Mateusz, you want to take that one first?
Well, yes. I believe that in a classroom where there is a single teacher and multiple students, it's really hard to follow up on everyone's needs. And what is AI good at in particular is estimating or analyzing the students' feedback and the sentiment. So there are plenty of algorithms that can serve as a sentiment analysis, and they can flag any potential issues or risks before they escalate in a classroom. So I believe this could be a useful tool for a teacher to have an insight on the classroom.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to Marta next, and then Brett, we'll let you have the last word on this if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that AI-based tech will allow for more depth and breadth of teacher and student interaction and communication. We've already seen it in practice with a lot of the AI tools that we have out, where, historically an educator, for better or for worse, has been a bit of a bottleneck to both information and feedback in that loop. But AI tools remove a bit of that bottleneck in some ways, because they allow faster and more real-time and immediate feedback, or first pass at suggestions, or surface areas to go deeper. So there's lots of ways that AI can show you where the light is good for feedback, and also automate and make things a bit faster, of course, with teachers continuously in the loop and offering their own opinion in that process. And what I'm hopeful for, and I put this in the chat earlier in response to some other pieces of the conversation, was that, if you have more of that immediate feedback, I'm hopeful that actually has an impact on motivation, which, ultimately has a massive implication on whether or not this technology helps you or harms you, right? I think many people have gone to YouTube or search or online platforms if they're motivated to learn something, and many people have gone to those platforms to shortcut. And underlying how you use that tech is your motivation to learn or your motivation to get a task done. There was a recent podcast that used an analogy of forklift or weightlifting, right? Like the forklift is there just to get the job, to lift the thing. But if you're weightlifting, it's there for the purpose of getting stronger. And I think there's a similar analogy here for the use of the technology to accomplish the task, or to actually get better at what you were trying to accomplish. I'm hopeful that improved and increased and more in-depth feedback and freeing up teachers' time for more interactive engagement will move more people to that motivated side of the spectrum for weightlifting, in that analogy, if you will.
Great analogy. Thank you very much. Brett, let's go to you. We'll give you the last word on this one.
Yeah, look, I'm going to answer two parts to this question. One, just dive straight back into the feedback bit. I know Jim in the chat actually mentioned or referenced John Hattie and John Hattie's meta-analysis work early on. Feedback is one of the highest effect sizes that we know exist. If we want to improve student learning, we know that effective feedback is one of the best, most effective ways to do that. Marta said it, bottleneck sometimes for feedback. How much is a student really getting out of, they submit an assignment and a week or 2 weeks later comes back with a couple of paragraphs and a few different scribbles on different things. How much is the child then reading that? Because there is a disconnect between when they've done it, when they've got that feedback. The potential for AI to give real-time, in-the-moment feedback to really, really change and alter and improve the written outcome or the work outcome that a student is producing is absolutely phenomenal, and it is in line with established academic research. This is something that I think that probably has the most potential, or one of the areas that has the most potential to really see a positive gain in how AI can improve learning. And now I know we've referenced a couple of tools, and I've given Google a little bit of love today, Marta, haven't I?
We're giving up love. Now I'm a big HP fan.
Well, do you know what? I will admit that's the HP way. But I will actually put my HP hat on for just a moment, because at the start of this year, we launched worldwide a HP teacher, AI Teacher Academy, where teachers are able to go on, learn a little bit about the background of large language models, how they work, and then actually not necessarily learn specific tools, but what are some ways that both Mateusz and Marta said, what are some ways that we can actually do the job of teaching more efficiently, and we can actually go through there and demonstrate to them some of the ways. So that's actually a free course that's available on edX. Just look up HP AI Teacher Academy, and you can do some training, get certified in there, and really be able to lean in on some of the different ways that you can use AI tools to lighten your workload.
Well, thank you. And we'll be sure to get all the resources out to everybody that's been mentioned today. And I do want to go back, Marta, I've been trying to read the chats. I just can't keep up and keep going here. But I did notice you just posted, try that a third time, the document that you guys created, the Teacher Responsible Use of AI, the lesson plan. I did see that previously. One of my colleagues actually shared it with me earlier today, and I then shared it with some of my former colleagues at my district. So I thought that was a great tool there. So if you haven't had a chance yet, everybody should definitely check that out. But
there's so many. I'm happy to follow up with a longer list of both that Google has made, but also ones out in the industry. So I'm happy to pass along some more links after the call.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll be sure to share it any way we can to get the information out there. So, all right, we've gone way long today, and I am very appreciative of everybody's time today, both the attendees
and the long. Guests. 2 minutes is not way long.
Well, in my mind, we were doing 45 minutes, so we're way long.
Oh,
so.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm very happy because it's been great conversation, lots of interesting ideas and thoughts. So I'm grateful that you guys stuck around for us as long as you did. So we'll wrap it up here, but we'll say thank you to all the panelists, of course, and everybody who attended today. I want to let everybody know that a recording of this session and any resources mentioned will be provided to all the attendees in the coming days. And in the meantime, the video recording of our previous roundtable discussion on how AI could help improve the quality of education, that's now available on our YouTube channel. We'll get a link to that up to you as well. And you can also hear an audio version of that roundtable session as an episode on our new podcast that I host called Innovator Insights. We'll put a link up there for that. And of course, you can get that on any place you listen to podcasts as well. So I hope you all found this session to be extremely informative and valuable. Once again, I'm Scott Fisher with GAT Labs, and hope everybody makes it a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Big shout out to GAT Labs too, because it's these types of discussions that are actually so valuable and helping share quality information and quality understanding around the world at scale, making an impact on student learning. Love it. Thanks, GAT.
Thank you.
Very kind of you. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you for watching. A huge thanks to our guests, Marta, Mateusz, and Brett, for joining us in this session. If you enjoyed this discussion, please make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon to be notified of upcoming sessions.